Hello, Saints. Still in chapter 3 of Galatians, and we're picking up on verse 6. We're going down through verse 14. We're talking about how faith brings righteousness. And it's important here that we see it in the Old Testament. Genesis 3:15 is what we're talking about when we pick up in verse 6, where Paul writes, "Even so Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness." He mentions this again in Romans chapter 4. So he's using the example of how Abraham was just before God. Not because he was sinless, but because he had faith in God. He took him at his word. He believed him. That's why he was saved. And therefore, he says in verse 7, be sure that it is those who are of faith who are the sons of Abraham. It's not about a bloodline. It's about a faith line. That's how we're saved. The scriptures, he says in verse 8, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the gospel beforehand to Abraham, saying, all the nations will be blessed in you. So then those who are of faith are blessed with Abraham, the believer. For as many as are of the works of the law are under a curse, for it is written, cursed is everyone who does not abide by all the things written in the book of the law to perform them. Now that no one is justified by the law before God is evident, for the righteous man shall live by faith. This is a pickup out of Habakkuk 2. And so what we see here, that Paul's stressing that it's not by doing the law. If you're going to save yourself by the law, he says that you have to be able to do everything. He says, cursed is everyone who does not abide by all the things written in the book of the law to perform them. And we know we can't. So that's not the path back through the law. He calls us to obedience. It's true. But that's not what goes on the scale of salvation. That's the result of salvation. That shows we've been transformed and translated into Christ. But this is not the way back, because we've already broken it. Even if you kept the law perfect, you have still broken the law. So you're still a lawbreaker. And it's not the way back. So that's important for us to understand. He says in verse 12, however, the law is not of faith. On the contrary, he who practices them shall live by them. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us. Remember the great exchange. For it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree, in order that in Christ Jesus the blessing of Abraham might come to the Gentiles, so that we would receive a promise of the Spirit through faith. And that's how we receive it, through faith in Christ. And we trust in him as we abide to change us, to transform us, and to grow us. Yes, he still calls for obedience, but our transformation is through faith in him. It is a God-given grace that saves us, not how well we can keep the law. Next time, we'll talk about the intent of the law. Blessings.